Ghostbusters 2016. Now, just to start off, this is the movie that had, before Suicide Squad came in with all of its most recent controversy, we had, I felt like it was a full year of just solid Ghostbusters controversy. And it just amped up more and more as the trailers came out, and I don't know. More people were talking to other people that they didn't like, and I kind of just hate everyone involved in the whole thing. Like, I hate everyone who was in the movie, made the movie, me, you, I kind of just feel like we should all just have a blanket feeling of hatred for anyone who even remotely concerns themselves with this, solely because it was so stupid how mad people were getting. I mean, there were people getting mad about it, erasing their childhood, like they were gonna get erased, like some Back to the Future stuff. There were people who were mad that it was women. There were people, even the people who were on the right side of things were kind of stupid, because there would be people, who were legitimately dumb, like I don't want it, because it's all women. And then there are the people who are like, you shouldn't hate it because it's all women, because that is completely stupid. But then those same people, some of those people, not all of them, some of those same people would be stupid because someone would say the childhood thing, which in itself is a little stupid, but they would take the childhood thing and somehow translate that. It's like you watch a video, like Angry Video Gamer is the perfect example, where he made a simple video. It's like, Ghostbusters is a classic film. He doesn't want it to, he doesn't care to see the new one, and he wasn't going to review it because it was something that was so close to him as a part of his childhood. And I think he did it probably in the most logical way. Some people acted like it was just the dumbest thing, like it would literally erase their childhood. For him, it was like, well, I love Ghostbusters so much, I don't want to see this new one. It's like, I don't think this really happened, but Footloose had a remake, and Red Dawn and Nightmare on Elm Street had a remake. I doubt any of those people's childhoods were erased, and those were all classic films. Not as big as Ghostbusters, of course. I don't think Nightmare on Elm Street, or maybe Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th possibly had comics, but Ghostbusters is like, and there are a lot of different things in it, and that's one of the things I'm definitely on the side of. I wish it was just a continuation of Ghostbusters, because for sure that would have been the best thing about this movie, because the Ghostbusters isn't like, Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's like, excuse me, oh, we remade one of the movies or something like that, or it's a remake, or like the Footloose and Red Dawn thing, both of which I think got bad reviews. I know Red Dawn did. I don't even remember Footloose, but it's just like, those were just little things. And Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street have film series, but Ghostbusters is like every form of media type of series. Like, they're not just two movies, but there's the TV show, which takes place right after the first movie, and then there are comic books, there's multiple video games, there's a new video game that actually tied in with the most recent movie, which is really weird because in that game that it actually is a continuation of the normal Ghostbusters universe, and it doesn't actually tie in with the movie at all. It's just the sort of typical video game tie-in thing where it's like, it's the name, but it has nothing to do with the actual movie. So that was the weirdest thing. It was like, they took the time. I heard the game was really crappy, but they took the time to make that at least a continuation of the actual universe. And then the movie comes out and it just wipes all that away. And I understand why people hate that. I don't think they should take it as far as it erases my childhood, but like with the Angry Video Gamer thing, it was like, I'm just not gonna see it because I just don't want to see a movie that I think is going to suck, which a ton of people thought that, from the trailers in general. And so, there are just lots of different classes where people were being smart about it, and then people were just being stupid. Every side had a good point, except, well, not the people that were mad because it was women. That's 100% dumb. But the other two sides had good points, and then people that took it too far. But going into this movie, and I saw it super late. The reason this review is so late is because I didn't really care to see the movie. Like, I'm not the biggest Ghostbusters fan. I like Ghostbusters for sure. I saw the movies, and I do have the video game, which pretty much everyone says this in the reviews. But if you haven't played the Ghostbusters video game and you like Ghostbusters, you're missing out on one of the best games seriously ever made, and definitely one of the best games that's like a tie-in to a film franchise or something like that, because it is great. It really is like that's basically the third Ghostbusters movie, and is freaking perfect. Like there's literally one thing missing from that entire game, and it's multiplayer. Other than that, it is seriously like a perfection of a game, and that is all there is to it. And I kind of want to play it again. It's been a long time since I played it, but I'm like, man, that game is super fun. It's really actiony, but it is really creepy at points because you are actually dealing with ghosts. But it's such a great game. So if you haven't had that chance, I don't know if you can buy it for digital download, which they should remake that game. If there are a couple of games I wish were remade, I wish they'd remake that and add multiplayer. The same as I wish they would remake the Warriors video game and add multiplayer to that one, or at least online multiplayer. But it's a great freaking game, so check it out if you haven't. But going into this movie, I didn't really care to see it either way. It was kind of like, really the main reason I wanted to see it was because of all the controversy. To be totally honest, I'm one of the people, and like I said, I kind of like Ghostbusters, so I was admittedly curious enough to spend the. It was still in normal theaters right now, so I was still curious enough. It wasn't just the controversy, but I was still curious enough to see how does this remake compare? Because I've only ever seen that I can think of two actual remakes or three remake movies. I've seen Friday the 13th, which is actually phenomenal, and that's a perfect example of a remake because that movie could have been in between just a different Friday, two other Friday the 13th movies, technically after the third one because he has the mask in the remake. But that's a great movie. And I saw the remake of My Bloody Valentine, which I personally thought was pretty cool because it's like a mystery horror thing. And I saw House of Wax too. I forgot about that one. And that was alright. That was a long time ago I saw that, and that was kind of meh. But I guess so. This makes it the fourth. It's the first remake I've seen that wasn't a horror movie. So there's that. And going into it, I'm like, that's like the big thing because, looking at the other remakes I thought of, which I only until I was thinking about just now. I thought about this a little earlier and still forgot that I'd seen the other remake movies. I could only remember Friday the 13th because I liked that one, and the other two are fine. And plus, My Bloody Valentine was I don't know, that may have been longer ago than Friday the 13th, but Friday the 13th is like a great movie remake, and it's like actually super intense in the beginning, so that's why it really stands out in my head. But going into this, I was like, I don't really care that much. I'm not like crazy epic, super huge, over the top Ghostbusters fan. I like Ghostbusters. I don't have it on Blu-ray or DVD or no one I know has it on videotape. At least not that I know of. Like my parents never had it, and it's one of those things. It's not like Back to the Future for me, where it's like I love Back to the Future. That would be my thing. Where if they were like, we're remaking Back to the Future, that I would truly hate, and I'd still see it because I'd be like, I have to truly see how this compares, which it just can't. But going into it is like, all right, how is this gonna play out? Is it gonna suck? People hate it. Especially, the big thing now is Suicide Squad has lower ratings than Ghostbusters, and I feel like everyone that puts that is a little over the top. Where it's like, I know exactly why. After seeing Ghostbusters and having seen Suicide Squad, I know exactly why Ghostbusters has a higher rating than Suicide Squad, and it's because the movie doesn't fall apart like halfway through the movie where it's like, oh, this was super awesome, and then it just declines after that. I don't think it should be as low as it is for Suicide Squad, but I think it's like 77. It's like a C plus. I think that's pretty fair for the Ghostbusters remake. This movie is not terrible. I watched a couple reviews and people are kind of in the middle, and I'm kind of the same. There's some people that just completely think it's the worst thing ever made, which you'll see a lot of the comments. And I just think that's a bit over the top. And a lot of people say it's like, oh, it's not, nostalgia or anything like that. But I feel like that's what it is. And the movie, at some points, it does kind of do it to itself because there are a lot of callbacks to the original movie. And considering all the hatred, which obviously they did all that stuff before the epic hatred came into play, I was like, oh, that kind of sucks for you guys having all these callbacks to the original. And it's like, oh, that kind of burns you, doesn't it? So it kind of does it to itself, but at the same time, people saying it's like the worst thing ever made, and it's just a terrible, terrible movie. It's not. It's pretty funny. I'd laughed quite a bit throughout it. There's some stuff, like the first joke, I didn't laugh. The very first joke, I was like, that's not what I was expecting from Ghostbusters, but I thought it was okay. Like, the opening scene and stuff is kind of good, and then there's a bit of a letdown, and I'm gonna save that for the spoiler discussions. It's like a really minor thing, but I was like, huh, that's how it started, huh? I was like, okay, the scene was good, and then it was the transition to the next scene that was disappointing. So I was like, oh, a bit lackluster, if I'm being totally honest. Like, I thought there was something cool was about to happen, and it was kind of just like, here you go. It's like, oh, and rest of the movie plays. So, beginning, there was like, a great start, and then it had like a minor disappointment, but I laughed throughout the movie. There were some funny jokes. I think the biggest thing to really note is that it's clearly modern Ghostbusters. It's very scene oriented and not character joke oriented, and that I think is the big difference. Where it's like these are seriously jokes about this right here, and it's not about these people. And they make jokes about certain characters and stuff like that, but it's not like the old stuff where it was like they would kind of bounce off of each other, or they would make jokes in like serious situations about each other. It was like, here's a thing that is meant to be the joke, and it, for the most part, it made me laugh. I think Chris Hemsworth's character made me laugh like the whole time. I like really dumb characters. Like, he was too dumb, but I like too dumb characters sometimes. Like, it just makes me laugh, and maybe because I seriously didn't go into this with any sort of expectations. I think I kind of stayed exactly where I was. I didn't think it would be terrible, to be totally honest, and I didn't think, in general, I tend not to think movies are going to be like super epic, and I certainly didn't think that about this movie, and so I was exactly where I thought I'd be, and I was like, I laughed more than I thought because the jokes did make me laugh. I thought they were really funny, and then that kind of stops. It's really, I think it's like high flying jokes. Like, they kind of come a mile a minute early on in like the first two acts, I'd say, or first act and a half, and then it slows down and it gets more serious when it's really about like ghost busting and stuff like that towards the end, which is some of the like the big battle climax that they show in the trailer with the Times Square stuff, and that was that was fine with me, but I laughed a lot more. I realized that as I was watching. I was like, and it always happens when I'm laughing a lot and then I'm not laughing as much. I always pick up on that. It's like the jokes are really funny, and then it's either the jokes aren't as funny or there just aren't any jokes. And I felt like there weren't that many jokes. There were some jokes and some I weren't laughing at later as it went on. But for the most part, I thought it was still overall a funny movie. Now, there were a ton of things. I shouldn't say a ton of things, but there were quite a few things where I was like, that doesn't make any sense, and that's kind of disappointing, much like the opening stuff. And one of my biggest disappointments, similar to Suicide Squad, was the villain thing, because as you watch the movie, it seems like it's going in one direction, and then it's like, actually, no. It's once again like the opening thing that they did. It seems like it's going to ramp up to something really cool, and it's like, oh, that's super lackluster and disappointing, and also a little weird, and kind of makes no sense. So the villain himself, I didn't particularly enjoy, especially the way they make it seem early on, and it's like, no, that's not actually how it's going to end up playing out, and it won't be as cool, and then it doesn't really make as much sense as it goes on, because things start to change for the villain, and it's like, like, that's a little weird. Like, it just happens, and then the way they defeat the final thing definitely wasn't funny to me. That was like it's not the final joke, it's the final joke in like the battle. That was not funny to me, so I didn't like that. And there's a thing that happens at the very end of the whole climax that literally makes no sense whatsoever. I was like, oh, and then it's gone, unless that's I don't know, they plan on doing something for like the sequel, I guess. But it made no sense at the climax of all the action, or the conclusion of all the action sequence. It's just like, oh, this thing happened. Next scene, they changed the thing that happened, and it's like, why did that happen, and why was that relevant or in any way, shape, or form? So there are definitely some things in here where it's like, that's either disappointing or just plain stupid. What I did enjoy personally, they got all the cameos from everybody, from the old movies except Rick Moranis, because he's so effing rich. He's just like, I don't want to act, which is good for him. Rick Moranis is pretty awesome, but they had everyone in here. They even had Harold Ramis. They honor him. He's the first person that they honor, which I thought they did his in a really awesome way. And if you aren't really paying attention, you won't see it. And I kind of feel like I could spoil this, but the movie's only like a month old, so I still won't. I'll still save that. But I like the way they did his. All the other ones I thought were pretty cool. They did one that was super obvious. It was like, oh, it's meant to be funny this way because the character it acts like this when it's the actor who was obviously in the old Ghostbusters movie. So it was like that one. I was like, I get the super obvious joke, and it was just like, meh, whatever. The other ones, there were two that really surprised me. Because I didn't know they got everyone. I thought they got more than just the Ghostbusters. They got everyone in this, and that really surprised me. I didn't know they were gonna do that. I thought it was just gonna be, they got like the Ghostbusters in there, like literally the Ghostbusters, but they had every main character except for Rick Moranis in this movie. And I like the way my favorite one was the one I expected the least actually, and it's towards the end of the movie. And it's not the taxi scene because that's actually in the trailer. So it's the one before that was probably my favorite one because I had no idea that person was actually going to cameo, and they had they have a bunch of lines. They pretty much have pretty much every maybe not no definitely not every character. There's only two of them I think that actually say lines from the old movie, but the one where it worked, I was like that's my favorite one. That was my favorite cameo. And then there are two towards the end of the movie, and then there was another surprise one that I didn't expect at the end of the movie as well. There are two that show up like at the end, but I'm trying not to specify exactly how it all plays out, but there are two that show up at the end. The second one that shows up towards the end is the one I wasn't expecting, and the first one, I was pretty much waiting for the whole movie because I was like, where the earth is this person at? I was getting a little upset. I was like, well, they better have this person in here. They have everybody else. So I was glad that happened. But I liked the cameos. I thought that was really cool. Movie itself, like I said, I thought it was fine. The jokes I thought were funny. Um, it's a funny movie. It's a really modern comedy movie. Like I said, it's really more about like the situations, and they make jokes about some of the characters. Those I didn't particularly like so much. Mostly because honestly, I wasn't thinking about it. I was trying, it's not trying to make it about like race, and it's like why is Patty the one who isn't a scientist and all this other stuff. And you go through it, and they made like very specific jokes. And I was like, make that annoys me because it's like, oh, there's like one scene, and it's the one in the trailer where she has the big dragon ghost on her, and so they have a point where they're talking. It's like, okay, you're doing fine, Patty, try a little bit harder. And I was like, that kind of annoyed me a little, and that wasn't the only time that happened, and that was the first time it happened, I think. And it's just like, I don't know, I don't know. And then it happened later on, and it's like, oh, it just always seemed like if something was not perfect, it was the black woman, and that really did bother me because it happened several different times. I was like, I know these are minor things, but it was just like it was only her. Like it was never like, oh, it switches up and maybe it's Patty and maybe it's one of like maybe it's Abby or Aaron or Holtzman. I believe it was Holtzman was her name. For some reason, she was the only one where they use her last name, probably because it's a cool last name. But it was always Patty. It was always Patty who wasn't like 100% perfect, or is like if something like is a tiny bit wrong, or if something's like whatever, it was Patty. And I was like, that a little bit does bother me, like just the tiniest bit, because it's just like it happened several times throughout the movie, and I was like, it's just hard not to bring that up to me. So that I definitely noticed. One thing that a lot of people mention is like with the whole feminist stuff going on, a lot of people talk about how it's still anti-feminist because the movie like really plays up women, but it makes all the guys super dumb. And technically that's true. For people, I'm not gonna go into a whole feminist thing, but feminism isn't about empowering women. Is actually just about equal rights between men and women, and I feel like a ton of people don't actually know that. And oddly enough, it's kind of funny because this movie technically does it in like the opposite way than people probably were expecting, where it's like, oh, the controversy was about how it was all women, but even with it being all women, it's still not feminist because it's like, oh, all the guys are kind of dumb and are totally useless, or just not right, in the parts that they play, or just aren't useful at all. So it was kind of funny when I read comments like that. Like technically that's true. It's not, it's not that big of a deal. Either way, I didn't care to begin with, so I wasn't even thinking about that crap. But ultimately, I thought it was a fine movie. Would I buy it? No. But like I said, I didn't even buy the originals, and I really like the first Ghostbusters movie. I'll play the crap out of that game. I'll play the game a million times before I watch any of the movies, again, to be totally honest, because I'm just more into games. And plus, the game is longer than the movies, and it's actually a bit more enjoyable because it's freaking crazy if you play the game. Um, I won't even spoil the game for you guys because the game is phenomenal, seriously. But I thought the movie was fine. I don't think it's, if I had to pick between one or the other, as far as the original Ghostbusters and then Ghostbusters 2016. And that's why I called this. This is the first time I've ever had to review a remake. So I'm calling this Ghostbusters 2016, and then the original Ghostbusters, if I ever decide to review it, will just be Ghostbusters, because I won't retroactively add the 1984 stuff to that. Like, I would never review the Michael Bay Transformers and then go back to, like, well, that's a little different with the Transformers movie, because that's, I don't know, because they're literally like the only ones. It's the old movie and then the current stuff. So I don't know. That's a little bit different. But this one, especially with it's Ghostbusters. I don't think, unfortunately, the Transformers movie wasn't nearly as popular as Ghostbusters. It was barely even in theaters, to be totally honest. So it's a little different. But for this one, it's like, it's Ghostbusters 2016. It's not just Ghostbusters to me. And I still think it was a fine movie. I do wish, above all else, that it just continued on, because I hate the fact that they did wipe away everything. And they had all the actors in it, as for with all the cameo stuff. And it's like, man, they could have done the cameos as a part of the actual story, where they know the Ghostbusters, or they teach the new Ghostbusters, or it just starts up, where they're already the Ghostbusters, and then we see the old Ghostbusters at some point through the movie, like, this is what we did during this time or something. I do think that would have been a better movie, because that is my biggest thing, where, the people who went way over the top, like, it'll erase their childhood. It does suck to wipe away the Ghostbusters, because, like I said, other remakes haven't been as big, whereas, like, Nightmare on Elm Street, that had a bit of controversy and stuff, and it's not Robert Englund who is doing it. But that's not Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters has 2 movies, a billion comic books, which still go on. The comic books have been going on forever. 2 different cartoon series. The first one went on for like 7 seasons or something crazy. The Ghostbusters have met the Ninja Turtles in comics. They've had a million video games. They've got 100 trillion different toys. It's totally different than, oh, we did a remake of an old horror movie, or Footloose, which I'm pretty sure Footloose didn't have a TV show, even like, a one-off comic or anything. So it's very different, and I do wish, like everyone, that it just was just the next one. And I think seriously that's why a lot of people had a problem with it. I feel like people took that and it's like, oh, it erases, or it replaces the old one, and that's why it sucks. And I feel like, as much as people say that's not the reason, I feel like it is, because the movie isn't terrible. Like, it is not a horrific movie. It's got some funny moments. It's got some stuff for sure that doesn't make sense, and I'll get into the spoiler stuff. But I do want to know what you guys thought about the movie. If you just truly hated it, you can certainly save it, because I'm doing the spoiler stuff right after this. So if you prefer, there's a link in the description, and you can just hop over and put all your comments in the spoiler thing and just go nuts with that. But I do want to know what you guys thought about it. So if you want to put it here in the spoiler video, you definitely can. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the spoilers video.